Do you know around how many minutes?
Till about 1 o'clock, maybe 10 after, something like that.
Are you guys going to start at 1?
No, we're gonna start in a few minutes, but we'll end about 1 o'clock.
Okay, perfect. I'm gonna keep driving then. I'm almost home.
Okay, okay,
But I can hear you guys.
okay, thank you.
We get to see where she's driving. That's the back seat, and that's the back of her. Okay, oh, here's Sadell Popinski. I know her.
Very nice picture.
You're muted, Sid. Sid, you're muted. Now you're unmuted. Hi there.
There she is.
Here comes the flood.
Yeah, oh, yes. Alan?
Everybody,
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Alan,
everyone. David, hi, Sandy. You're muted, Sandy.
it's two Greg dudes. So, hi, Bill.
Good morning.
Well,
How are you?
Morning, Bill.
Great.
Here's
Oh,
that
yeah,
elegant
boy.
looking.
everybody stand up, salute JP's is here.
And Eric, it looks like someone's in their car.
Yes,
Okay.
that's,
She's a guest. She's driving home.
Oh,
Okay.
Almost home.
Oh, then we got Greg Do and the real Greg Do. Oh, look. Hello, Susie.
Hi,
Nice one.
Susie?
we leave for Iceland tomorrow.
You do?
Wow.
Yeah, and I had to be here today because Ann's not here. Isn't that,
Okay.
Linda?
That's
Bring
good.
back some cold weather.
Yeah.
We will try, I promise.
Right,
And
JP.
rain.
You're just going to escape the heat, aren't you?
So, well, I don't know if anybody's interested, but I can tell you so far, we have actually distributed 142 raffle tickets. Yay.
Wow.
Great.
Good.
Which is pretty good, I think.
yeah, I just sold another one today.
Oh, you did? Okay, well, okay. I don't know if you had any in your pocket, but
So what are they? What price ranges?
the price range, it's $25 a ticket or $5 for $100.
Okay.
The prizes are fantastic.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, you can win a shotgun. You can win the most gorgeous pendant you ever saw.
Okay.
You can also win custom-made boots.
Uh-huh.
You can win tickets to professional sports in Austin. You can win a
Okay.
rum party. Sounds pretty good to most of us.
I heard on the Q2 stadium for soccer. There's
Yep.
sold out. All matches are sold out. Seats 22,000. And there's
Ooh.
20,000 on the waiting list to buy
Yeah.
tickets.
Oh,
Wow. Well,
Wait.
we have tickets. So
So it's packed, huh?
So we could take our tickets and sell them for a good price, couldn't
oh,
we?
come on now.
The scalpel, yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, capitalism, yay.
Yeah, right.
Oh, but we would give the money to the Lions Club, so there you go.
Oh, yeah, sure.
We're recording this.
Oh, okay,
We are.
We're already recording.
okay, there we go.
well, folks,
And
I
if
guess.
Mr. Paxton,
Get started.
the federal government will tell them about you, yeah.
I'm
Oh.
also looking for volunteers. Maybe I'm supposed to wait. Am I supposed to wait?
We'll give you a chance.
Okay,
We
then
get our
I'll
meeting
wait.
started here now.
Okay.
We have the real Greg Do and Greg Do.
we have two Greg Dews. Greg, you send me, I'm Sid please?
I will.
Okay, are you putting in the chat or send it as an email?
What would you prefer?
Email,
Okay, I'll do that.
okay.
Okay, folks, we'll call this meeting to order, the oldest Lions Club in the world. And I would ask you to mute yourselves. And Glenda is going to give us the pledge and the pledge to Texas.
Okay, let's stand up.
We stand.
Stand up for the pledge.
Something's not ready for this.
Uh,
So
Chuck, I got it. You want me to take it?
you take it, because my computer is not reacting to what I'm trying to do.
All right, hang on a second. I got it right here.
Okay.
Folks, we'll be right there.
All right, go for it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And now the pledge to the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
Yeehaw.
Okay, now you can unmute yourselves.
Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody here and we'll introduce guests. If anybody, I've got a guest, if anybody else has got a guest at this time, put your hand up and introduce them. Done? At this time, we have Erica Benita. She is a guest. She was at this vision screening last Saturday and expressed the interest in the club and what's going on. So I invited her onto this Zoom meeting. Now, where is she?
She's in the upper right-hand corner.
Oh,
yeah,
there we are.
the lady in the car.
She's
Hi,
driving.
Erica.
Hi there.
Good
to see you.
afternoon, Erica.
Anybody else with a guest? No other guests? I'd like to list our birthdays that we have. Steve Riley on the 4th, Chuck Meldebaum on the 8th, and Ann Rogers on the 9th. We'll go into announcements. Report on the clay shoot. Susie, you wanted a little bit of time. You go ahead. You're muted.
You're muted, Susie.
Okay. Well, we have been working along, and as I said earlier, we have sold, we can account for at least 142 tickets, maybe more. Anyway, we have been working and organizing, and what we need is, if you know somebody who wants to shoot or wants to organize a group to shoot, we'd love to have them. We're still looking for sponsors, and I personally am looking for volunteers. So if you've never thought of volunteering, and I'm looking at this group and it looks to me like most of them have already volunteered, but if you haven't, I am happy to dragoon you into helping. So particularly if you have, it's a Friday morning, so it's hard for people who work, but you know, if you've got like a child in college or a grandchild in college who's off on Friday morning, we could certainly use the help.
Right. So, and with regards to the teams, if somebody wants to shoot, that doesn't mean they have to bring a team. They could just come themselves and we'd put them in with the team.
Right.
Yeah.
You do have to, it's best to pay ahead of time because it's less expensive.
Mhm.
Right.
Who put Susie Gallagher on my picture? Because you
That's me.
spelled my name wrong.
I just noticed that. I'm fixing that right now.
Okay, thanks.
Looks right. Susie looks right.
The Susie is right.
Is that right?
There you go. That's right.
Okay.
My name is changed. Okay.
Susie, what if they don't have a rifle and they want to shoot?
No, it's a shotgun, not a rifle to begin with. And
Okay,
if they want to, then I guess they need to contact the Austin Clay because we don't provide guns.
Okay.
I think, did somebody actually say they wanted to shoot who doesn't have a gun? Okay, anyway, all right.
Okay, Greg, could we get a update on our plastic project?
Sure. Let me get it up on my screen here in front of me. Just looked at it. I don't know the exact number because I don't have it in front of me, but I was just updating. It looks like we have about 220 pounds collected so far. It's the first week of August. Well, it's getting into August, isn't it? We have until October 1st to reach our 500 pounds. So I'm going to go back and look, make sure I haven't missed any of the reports. But we're not moving quite as quickly as we did the first round. So just a reminder to keep collecting the plastic and turn it in. Report to me when you do that, and we'll get there.
So
I think by this time on the last round, we had collected our 500 pounds. So we've slowed down a little bit. I think it's the heat. I blame everything on the heat.
I think it's our deadline for that is what, the 1st of October?
That's right, October 1st.
Okay, that's good.
So just under 2 months left to do that. I'll send out some reminders over the next couple of months to keep us focused on it.
Good. Well, thank you very much, Greg. A great project too. At this time, let's have our
Do you want to introduce Erica a little bit better now?
Erica. Where is she?
She's muted on in your car.
Hi.
Hi. Did you want to say something, Erica?
My name's Erica Benitez, and well, I just wanted to join the Lions Club. I'm trying to build a big community right now, so I wanted to see what you guys offer, what you guys do, and I'm glad to be here.
Good.
Great, wonderful. We're so
We're
glad
glad-
you're.
We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
Now, let's go to our member profile, and that'll be David Mann. So David, if you want to take it away.
Okay, hopefully you can hear.
Yep.
I was born in Schenectady, New York, which is upstate New York. I received my PhD in experimental nuclear physics from RPR in Troy, New York. I then worked at Rice University as a senior research associate, then worked at Los Alamos Nuclear Facility, leading research on such items as radiation treatment for cancer. That was good since radiation was used to treat my prostate cancer recently. I then worked at Schlumberger in the oil industry for 30 years, and then worked as a consultant in the oil industry out of Houston, even though I lived in Austin. So there was a long drive twice a week.
Yes.
I run 2 groups here in Austin, Romeo's, which is retired old men eating out, which is kind of interesting because sometimes we have as many women as we have men at our meetings for our speakers. I also run a group called Empty Nesters, which probably all of you in this group could join.
We'd love to have you.
We'd love to have you. I run that group with the help of about 5 other Lions here who are at this meeting today. I also served as a Democratic precinct chairman for 9 years until last month when I resigned for health reasons. For the Lions, we collect glasses from several eye doctors. We test eyes, we sew roses, etc. And I hope to be more involved with projects in the future.
Great.
And
Thanks very much. We'll keep you busy, don't worry. Thank you very much, David. That was great. It's interesting to hear the people's history and where they've been and what they've
One thing
done.
about empty nesters, if you want, the next event is eating together in a crowd at Olive Garden. It'll be on September 11th. If you want to come, contact me. And
Which Olive Garden?
On Burnett, right near 183.
Okay, gotcha. Good deal. Let's at this time turn over to our program, and I'll ask Greg if he will introduce our speaker.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Speaker today is Tim Sump. He is an Aggie class of 2015. Tim, stand forewarned, there are a lot of TSIPs on the call. I've known Tim all his life. He's family. And what he may not know and his parents don't know is at an early age, I began whispering into his ear how much better Texas A&M was than University of Texas, both of his parents being graduates of UT. And much to their dismay, he attended Texas A&M, graduated with a degree in aerospace engineering, and is just a fine young man. After working for a couple of years in the aerospace industry, which he'll tell us more about, spent a couple of years working with the Peace Corps and is now employed at NASA, and he may say a little bit more about that as well. I could talk about Tim for a long time, but I'd rather give the time to him to share his experience with you, and I'm proud to introduce my nephew, Tim Sump.
Ah,
Thank you very much, Uncle Greg. Can you give me a sound check, Uncle Greg, while you're drinking water? Okay. You talk about me well, but not as well as I do, because I do like talking about myself very much.
Yeah.
But, let me see if I can share my screen here. That has to be enabled by the host. Because I do have some slides that I put together. Here we go. I hope I can just do it like this. Okay. And what if I hit F5?
You are sharing now.
Okay. And is it a nice full screen with a slide?
It's beautiful.
Okay. I designed this myself. That's a lie, actually. Sorry to start with a lie. I chose this as one of the pre-formatted. Okay, so if anybody is familiar with the Mac Davis song, "Oh Lord, It's Hard to Be Humble," I drew my inspiration for the title from this. So I want to talk a little bit. Greg referred to my volunteer time in the Peace Corps. I'm primarily going to be talking about that, although, as I said, I do like to talk about myself. So at the end, if anybody wants to ask me questions about my work at NASA, I certainly can indulge. I want to start by saying a few things that I wrote down on my phone, if I can read it. I'm giving these slides with the presumption that the folks here have given or maybe have thought about giving sometimes to international aid causes. I know that many people have thought about that sort of thing. I had many times prior to being a part of it, but not sure how to navigate it. You know, you hear the horror stories about none of that money actually gets sent to where you want it to go or something like that. So I hope to be able to offer what I can to make this a little bit of an easier hill to approach if that's what you want to do. If you're the kind of person who actually limits your interest to the home front, to domestic aid or something like that, totally agree, totally understand. But a lot of these lessons may still apply. And I also have a note for myself to talk slowly, because if I get excited or nervous, or in this case, both, I tend to speak quickly. Okay. So as an introduction for myself, this is a little bit about me. I think Greg already gave all of this, so I'll just quickly say, Texas A&M University class of 2015, AWOOP, aerospace engineering. I did work after graduation in the aerospace industry for a few years as a systems engineer, and then I was a Peace Corps volunteer serving in Ghana, which is an English-speaking country in West Africa, from June 2018 to March of 2020. Many of you may remember a few events from March 2020 having to do with a certain coronavirus. So that was the reason for my service being cut short. Ordinarily, I would have continued my service to be ending the summer of that same year. And currently I work at NASA Johnson Space Center on the ISS program, that's the International Space Station, as a systems test manager. So a quick blurb about my service in Ghana. I was in the what is called the education sector. There are a number of different sectors of service, but I primarily taught mathematics at a junior high school level. Although the students themselves were not the typical age you would expect for junior high students. I think it was probably between about 18 and maybe 23 years. And this was very normal. It just depends on whenever those folks were able to start their schooling. I was in the northern region of Ghana, which I have a little map here on the right that shows you where Ghana is in West Africa. As you get further away from the coast, because of the way that the British colonized that country about 200 years ago, as you get further away, it's going to become a lot more rural, a lot more traditional customs and culture and religion even. You're going to see poorer infrastructure and education situation. And in fact, tribal conflicts. I had to be relocated partway through my service because there was less safety than the US government was comfortable with in the place that I was at the time. So that was difficult because my training was focused on culture and language for that area. So then I had to be flexible and learn a whole new place. At the bottom of the slide here, I am just inserting a reference to a blog that I kept. It's easy to remember, timingana.com. So if you want to read about that, you can. And if you don't, then that is perfectly understandable because everybody and their dog makes a blog when they go to the Peace Corps. The premise of the presentation I want to give today first involves the personal motivations I had for joining Peace Corps. So first, I knew it was going to be a challenge. I like a challenge. And I thought that I would be coming out the other end of it as more of who I wanted to be. So I'd be gaining that life experience. And I also had a belief in the mission of Peace Corps. Off to the right here, I have the 3 goals of the Peace Corps. The first one, probably something that anyone would expect, to help the people of interested countries in meeting their need for trained men and women. The wording here is very important. So interested countries were invited in meeting the need that they assign for trained men and women. We're not going to throw money at the problem. We're not going there. We're not just trying to throw college graduates at a underdeveloped country and see what shakes out. We're really trying to help the workforce of the country that invites us to come. Thus, my education, volunteerism. The second goal, so the second and third goals may not be expected by people outside of the Peace Corps. So the second goal is to help promote a better understanding of Americans on the part of the people served. So in my case, for Ghanaians, for the people there in Ghana, it was my all the time job to try and help increase understanding of Americans. And note, the wording here is important. It doesn't say make them like us. It says increase understanding. That's very important. Although we were not ambassadors, that was very clear in our training. So we don't have diplomatic immunity. We're responsible for ourselves, but we do act as sharers of what it means to be an American. And then the third goal, the reason why I refer to myself as not an ex-Peace Corps volunteer, but a returned Peace Corps volunteer, I still have that volunteer status. And that's because I continue to carry out the third goal, which is to help promote a better understanding of other peoples on the part of Americans. So I'm here to help fellow Americans learn more about Ghanaians. So, and not just Ghanaians, but other peoples. So specifically today, I'm not going to talk very much anymore about my service and about the country of Ghana, but I hope that this will still reinforce the third goal to help everyone here to understand other peoples. And then finally, the primary personal motivation, that's why I have it separate in bold here, is a desire to know that I'm doing good. That's the premise of this. I really wanted to be able to wake up in the morning and know for sure that when I went to sleep, I will have done some good. And that was something I wasn't sure of for some time after I graduated. So I wanted to be sure. To my mind, there's two extremes of that, either of which should be reached for, but you have on the left side, I'm calling it the life servant, someone who devotes their whole life to international aid and volunteerism. They're always on the front lines. They don't take a directorship or a managerial role. They're always right there in the place of highest need, doing their level best to help the people in need. They don't spend really any time at all in their home country or with their family. And then you have the other side, which I'm maybe a bit unkindly calling the blind checkbook, who occasionally remembers, oh yeah, there's all those poor people in there. We should really try and end the war on poverty and everything, but maybe doesn't have the greatest understanding. And if they see an advertisement like send $1 a day to help save this child's life right here, I say that they're a victim to that. It really grabs you by the heartstrings, and it's hard for you to think through, is this the best way to use my dollar if I want to help this person? But of course, there must be a middle ground between these two, between the life servant and the blind checkbook. And I want to try and help everyone, as far as I can, find that middle ground. So I'm going to give you some stories and some examples of what I'm calling honest failures. Someone who, or a situation where we tried to do good, or someone tried to do good, but it didn't work out for some reason. So I want to quickly say, first of all, this is a photo that I took while I was in Ghana. I thought it was hilarious how these chickens lined up for me. But that's not the subject of this slide. As a disclaimer, I'm not trying to make fun of any efforts. It's just that you can mean very well while not helping much, or even doing some harm when it comes to international aid and domestic aid. So these are examples of how things could go wrong, although all of these examples might have been the right call in another time or another place. That's what makes it so hard to be helpful. So the story that I'm calling the unused land. So imagine an underdeveloped community, a village, that an organization, an aid organization approaches them, scouts out the community, sees, oh my goodness, they're right next to this river bottom, great farming land, and they're not using it. They're not growing a thing on it. So what are we going to do? We just need to show them how to grow food there. They haven't thought of this yet. Okay, so they go to the village elders. They say, okay, look, if it's okay, we want to use the land over here. I know it belongs to y'all. We want to use this land, grow a bunch of different crops in the next growing season, and show you some of our techniques that we think might help you learn how to farm a little better. And then y'all have all the produce of what we grow. How does that sound? And the elders say, okay, you can do that if you want. They said, okay, great. And they went for it. And it was going really well. It was river bottom land, very good for the crops. I mean, it was growing very healthy. And a week before harvest, all the hippos came up out of the river and ate all of the crops. Totally destroyed. There was nothing to be salvaged. And the leaders of the aid organization they felt a little bit betrayed. They went to the elders and they said, did you see what just happened? And they said, yeah. And they said, did you know that would happen? And they said, yeah. And they said, why didn't you tell us? And the elders said, you didn't ask. You just walked in and said you were going to do this. So, and this is an example of a miscommunication. This aid organization had total tunnel vision on their goals. They didn't really ask for input from the community. They said, this is what we're going to do. And they didn't really shoot for true understanding. So you can see how they had a great idea and really good intentions, but you need that communication piece too. So this was an often quoted lesson for us. And of course, it's never called the unused land story. It's called the hippopotamus story. So here's another scenario I want to give regarding food aid. Food aid is not a bad thing, but here's a scenario where it might not be the right thing to do it this way. Let's imagine that a grain shipment is sent to a low-income community. Free grain. The price of grain locally totally plummets, and the local farmers who are growing their own grain and stuff are unable to sell for a price to recover and be able to replant for the next season. So what happens is they don't have enough seeds to grow next season. Now everyone in the community depends on these grain shipments because they can't grow for themselves because the price of grain is rock bottom. And that's the problem with international aid. You can't depend on it all the time. You never know if the funding is going to dry up. So what happens is you have harm to the local industry, local workers. They could be harmed too, in this case, the farmers. But it's not just with food aid. It's anytime you're sending, I will say, anytime free things are being sent to the community, it's worth asking, first of all, does the community want it? Because I guarantee you the farmers would have said, don't do this. And does the community really need it? If it's a famine situation, obviously, yes. But you don't just want to walk into any old community and give them a bunch of free grain. Some of y'all might be familiar with a company, a shoe company called Tom's. Not a bad company, very good company, very well intentioned. They say that for every pair of shoes we sell, we donate a pair to a community in need. That's great, except maybe the local cobblers at the community that receives these shoes might be a little upset at all the free shoes coming in and no one buying his shoes anymore. And it seems like a small and kind of silly example, but this kind of thing can have big impacts. So another example of meaning well, but it might not be a good outcome. Okay, this is a story I'm calling a deeper well. So a water well is installed in a community that draws twice as deep as any other wells. This means it has to get really dry for them totally to run out. And it's going to be a longer term source of viable water within the community. This is great for a lot of reasons for folks who know more about this. It's a huge chore sometimes to go and get water. And it could mean someone doesn't get to go to school because their job is to get water all the time. You imagine how much you use water. What if you had to pump every gallon out of the ground? Some folks here might remember a time when we still had to do that around here. It's a chore. The problem was the well was over complex. It was easily broken. And when one part broke, it was totally unusable. So no one around knew how to maintain it. And it was expensive. They couldn't just buy new parts because it was custom made or something like that. So the well is really nice to have for a week until it breaks. And they can't use it. And it just sits there unused. And that's a shame because that organization did a really good job installing that awesome well, but no long-term plan for how to keep it operational. The photo actually is a photo that I took during my service. And if you notice, these are all girls who are fetching water. That's part of except for all of the ones doing the work are girls, but there is a little boy who's sitting down, which is, well, I won't go into that. Culturally, that fits with some of the people there. So you'll notice that the girl who is up in the air, she's jumping. And that's because this well is a pump well designed to be operated by adults. But the local culture does not agree with adults fetching water. This is a chore for children to fetch water and carry it back on their heads. And yes, I'm talking about those giant pails down there. They do carry that full of water on their heads. Not something I was ever capable of doing, but a 10-year-old girl can do it. Amazing. But you can imagine if they're not operating it correctly, it's going to wear out. And it did. About a week after I took this photo, it broke and no one could use the well anymore. So when they installed this, they didn't design and didn't think about this has to be usable for children or usable by children, because that's who's going to be fetching water. I'm talking long here. Finally, one more example. So this happened in a community that I was in. Was built, organization comes in, builds the library, leaves. They even filled it with books. And Greg, if you're thinking, if this isn't the library you're thinking of, this was in my second community, different one. And the problem was, I'm just going to start all of these. Here we go. The library, which had come in and been built, was seen as such a high value gift that the librarian title was very high status, and it was assigned to someone who was seen in the community to deserve the title, but not necessarily the job. So there's two things happening here. First, the books were seen as very high value. They didn't want to risk any loss or damage to the books. So children were not allowed to be in the library without librarian supervision, because no other adults were interested at the time. But the librarian never saw fit to visit the library. So that meant that it was shuttered, and the kids didn't have access to it. Now, I personally tried to intercede while I was there. I would supervise, but, and of course, children are rough with books. That's what they do. And there were a lot of disapproving adults in the community, but you know what? Either the books were going to rot on the shelves or they were going to get torn to pieces by the kids. I think the second, or worst case, they get torn to pieces by the kids. I think that it's much worse for them to rot on the shelves. So you can imagine, though, what happened was they didn't establish a long-term plan and a long-term community contact for how actually the community was going to use this library. They just built it and left. Similar, more serious issues have happened in my experience with computer labs too. Someone will come in and build a computer lab and furnish it with computers, and that leads to all kinds of problems of theft and the problem of maintenance that I referred to with the well, and lack of local training. So, examples of how it can go wrong. I would say that the best approach if you're thinking about giving is think about your intentions. So what am I trying to do? And will this do it? Am I trying to increase education? And will this accomplish that? So an important question to ask is, what happens when an aid organization leaves? And if you have a Band-Aid fix in a community, what I'm calling a Band-Aid fix, it's not good when the organization leaves. Instead, you want to seek self-sufficiency. You want to seek infrastructure. So an example of infrastructure, would it be better to ship a community water bottles or dig a simple well that's not going to break? Obviously, the simple well. Or the example of teaching skills. Everybody knows the saying, give a man a fish, he's fed for a day. Teach a man to fish, he's fed for a lifetime. That teaching idea is going to be much more effective in the way that aid is given. And as an example, there is a whole sector in the Peace Corps devoted to agriculture, in teaching agriculture techniques, which, I mean, a lot of these folks are farmers and they know their way around farm tools, but we have learned farm techniques that they might not know about. Things like when you plow the same piece of land over and over and over, at a depth underneath the plow, you actually start to get a really hard layer that becomes very difficult to pierce and can be problematic in dry and arid regions. And that's science that we've learned in the last century or something like that. So it's going to be very helpful for these people who may not know that. Or the science of composting. Some people just, they have a rubbish heap and it's not known that you can use this stuff, and they never heard the word nitrogen, but of course nitrogen is very important to farming. So try and teach these sort of techniques, and teaching that self-sufficiency. And also seeking understanding for those whom you're helping. So of course, this should remind you of the hippo story. So there's a concept called single stories. There's a Nigerian author. Her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, or you can just call her Adichie. And she uses the phrase single stories. This describes too simplistic and sometimes kind of false idea you might get about an individual or a group or a country, because you've only heard one aspect. And the classic case is something that I know I heard all the time and referred to as a kid was, you have to eat your dinner. Think about all the starving kids in Africa. And what does that teach you as a kid? Africans are starving. That's who they are. That's what they do. That's a single story. And that gives you an incorrect understanding. It's much better to understand that Africans are people just like us. It shouldn't need to be said, but if you think of it in those terms of, and I'm going to share an example later that was a surprising story for me. Let's see. So remember that developing communities who you might want to be donating to, these are not donation baskets waiting for a generous heart. Just like your school community growing up, or if you were in the Scouts or something like that, all communities have personalities and motivations and goals, not just, so if you're going to go in and help, you have to work with them first and understand what's needed. So there's a story that we learned in Peace Corps. I'm calling it the sign of community. Real quick, another organization approaches the community. They have a lot of funds. They say, we have all this money. What do you want? That's a great start, by the way. And they said, we can build you a school. We can make you a library, a well, maybe a better road from the market town nearby. So you don't have to walk, so you can take a vehicle or something, if you have them. And the elders got together and they got back to him. They said, we'd like a sign. And they said, a sign? I said, yes, we'd like a sign that says the name of our community at the entrance to our community. That's what they wanted. And this is a true story that we were told in Peace Corps, that the number one thing they wanted was that identity, that what really mattered to them, which might seem unnecessary to us, was that this community had their own culture. They wanted to be known. They wanted to be represented in the area. And that to them, although from some perspective wasn't the right call, that's what they wanted. And if you want to work with them, that's how you have to do it. So another strategy that you can use is if you're going to give, and like I said, this can be for domestic giving too, it should be a habit. It shouldn't be something that you're triggered into action by someone asking you. It should be something that you've done your own research, you've done your follow-up. It's part of a plan, or you think of it as a subscription, almost like Netflix or something like that. That means you're going to think about it in a much more intentional way. You're not just immediately going to say, oh wait, I need to go help those poor people. It's going to be a plan, something you do regularly. And I understand that a lot of these tips might already be well known and shared among the people here. So that was kind of a scattershot of ideas, but I want to try to close here. Some final tips. Of any kind of one-dimensional framing. Someone coming to you saying, we need these donations for these poor people over here. if it seems like they're only presenting you one way of looking at it using stereotypes, you might want to be wary because those people might not be really understanding the people they want to help, or in some cases might be trying to use your donations for something that they're not really talking about. That's possible, although not very common. I'm a little biased because I worked in the education sector, but I believe that education, especially targeting women's education, is one of the greatest ways that you can help a community. It's usually really high impact, but it does require a lot of involvement by organizations. You need someone there to help reinforce that with the teaching. And then global health charities, really impactful. There's a lot of good ones out there. They often provide services that locals can't do, whether they have the technology or the immunizations or the medicine or whatever it is. We're coming in with something that's really needed from the outside. So I have DWB, that's Doctors Without Borders. Sometimes it's also called Médecins Sans Frontières, that's the French term. But Doctors Without Borders is a good example. Any kind of anti-malaria organization, any kind of responsible where they build it and they can leave it, infrastructure products that require technology from the outside, but low maintenance, all very good things. And let's see, you do, if you're going to give, you do owe it to yourself to be wise, because you don't want to waste your well-meaning aid, and you will know that you're really doing the good that you would like to do. So if you folks are interested, there's a few topics that you can take away, and I guess, Greg, I can send you this information, you can distribute it. But there's an idea called effective altruism. It's a movement, I think it's something like 20 years old, where they use evidence and reason to figure out how is the best way to really help people. There's a book by philosopher Peter Singer called The Life You Can Save, Acting Now to End World Poverty. And there's a website that I encourage you to write down called givewell.org. They've done the research. They make it really easy to identify good organizations. And then there's also, if you want to go into the scholarly side, there's a book called Poor Economics. I'm not going to read the full title, but they take a evidence-based, like randomized, controlled trial approach to proposed solutions for combating poverty. So they really go into the scholarly aspect, and it's a brainful, but I think is worth the educational experience. And barring that, if you just want to be sure, Peace Corps accepts volunteers of all ages. So they're now again receiving applications for service abroad after COVID-19 shutdown, and they need volunteers, they need applicants. Or you can give, once it's set up, it's not ready yet because they don't have volunteers in country. Once it's set up, there's something called the Peace Corps Partnership Program, where you can give directly to a volunteer's project, or you can give to a education sector as a whole. But you can review different projects that volunteers themselves will post as a part of this program. You can say, oh, I'd like to help build a school in Nigeria, if that's the project there. But that's the end of my slides here. I can answer any questions you might have, or whether that's about this or my service, or I know there might be some interest in my work at NASA, I heard.
Tim,
I got a question.
Tim, can you release the screen so we go to gallery? Tim, let the screen, stop sharing screen.
Oh, okay. Let's see. Stop sharing.
I have a question?
Okay, Sam?
Can I ask my question?
Sure, Sam, go ahead.
Yes, sir.
You talked about the various programs that I won't call them failures, but concerns. My brother was a director of Peace Corps in the Houston office. Some kind of office they had there, and he would travel to Washington, D.C. in a lot of meetings, and they would talk about all various things of what they could
good to do for the people. And his regional area that he had, and I don't remember where he sent the people there from the Dallas area. But when it came down to really finding out how they wound up helping the community, instead of going through all the information that Washington wanted, these people only wanted bicycles. Bicycles, they could move from point A to point B, get to work and so on. That was the most fabulous thing that they did. And that was the biggest hit of all, is having bicycles and so on. And so Abel was able to work out the possibility of getting some bicycles to him. And that was his success. It was bicycles. It was just, nobody asked him. So they told him, we said, that's what we need. And I just wonder whether you saw that same situation with bicycles.
Well, I will tell you, I saw many, and I don't know when this occurred, but in the time that I was there in Ghana, I saw many huge, I mean, I'm talking big freight trucks full of bicycles. It must have been something like 300, 500 bicycles, because there's really high demand. And I don't think necessarily these were even donated. It might have been actual supply chain happening with people having bicycles in high demand, because it's way better transportation if the road is good, requires no fuel except what you got in your body. Very, and great for getting to and from a market. I personally used a bicycle many, many times a week. We, as Peace Corps volunteers, we were barred from using motorcycles. There were too many deadly incidents involving Peace Corps volunteers. So I used a motorcycle exclusively to get around between, it was about a 30-minute trip each way between where I lived and the market. And I don't know how many people have been to West Africa. It's very hot, but it's totally worth it because it's better than walking.
Well, secondly, from your personal point, since you work at NASA, Ghana has unbelievably had one of the top scientists in the world who designed the robotic arm on the Mars lander, Dr. Tubi, I pronounce his last name. He actually did the impact unit, that this is the robotic arm, and he's out of Ghana. They've got something like 20 people from Ghana working at NASA. Were you able to work with NASA while you were at Ghana at the same time doing Peace Corps?
That would be great, but no, I didn't. I had no prospects towards NASA until well after my service was ended, or I should say my service in country was ended. Like I said, I was in the north of the country. I'm almost totally sure that person was probably in the south of the country, where they have world-class universities, actually. But I could certainly sit down and have an interesting conversation with them for sure. But I was not aware of that. That's interesting.
Yeah, first, Dr. Tubi, T-R-E-B-I, and I can't pronounce his last name, but he's working at NASA now, and he from Ghana. He designed that robotic arm, so that they're using on the moon Mars lander.
I'm gonna go learn about that. Thank you.
Galen, do you have a question? Very Galen.
Yes, Tim, thank you, particularly for so many of us have had friends in the Peace Corps that have had great experiences. Tell us about the transition from the Peace Corps to NASA, how it happened and why.
That was pure luck. It was because my fiance at the time, she's now my wife, had gotten a very good job in Houston. And I was on the hunt for a job because I hadn't expected to need a job that quick. So I said, heck, I'll apply for NASA. That sounds great. And I qualified and they accepted me. It was sheer luck. And it's very unusual for folks in NASA to hire from outside the organization for a position like I have. But the fact is there was, the job market was good for me at the time. But specifically, I was sent home in March of 2020, and I started work for NASA in July. So I had a few months there searching for a job, but not too long.
Well, how did your experience in the Peace Corps, which you shared with us very thoroughly and very interestingly, how did that affect your service now in an engineering capacity in NASA?
It's funny you say that, because there's actually a direct connection between the Peace Corps, or an indirect connection between the Peace Corps and NASA, and that's President Kennedy, who was foundational in a lot of the missions. I mean, he was the executive action that came out of the White House for the Peace Corps happened under him, and of course, he was very famous for setting NASA on its track for the 60s. Apart from Kimmy, though, of course, I will say that the skills that I picked up in terms of being able to speak across different cultures, for those of you who are engineers, sometimes if you talk to someone in a slightly different sector, it's like a different culture. But that's more of a joke, though, of course. It's the ability, I'm sorry, I'm hunting for the word here, flexibility, and the being able to endure very difficult changes and unexpected changes.
Robert
Anyone who
Martinez,
knows-
question. Go ahead, Robert. Robert Martinez. And unmute yourself, Robert.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Tim Gigamagis.
Giga.
I'm a civil engineer, class of 60.
Hey,
But it was great. The question that I have, you mentioned that if you don't go and ask who the question, what you need and so forth, you can go to failure. But I recently heard the term collaborative servant engineer. A collaborative servant engineer is one that gets a group come together. They discuss what they need. They plan what they need. And then from there, they form the team. And I did that when we did some rain gardens in some schools. I went and talked to the teacher, the principal. I said, I need a contact person from the teachers, a contact person from the parents, and a contact person. And then we worked together and we brought in the parents, the kids, doing that at the school. But it had to be a collaborative team, but bringing a team together to work, and then they learn and they keep it and maintain it.
You know what, you're absolutely right. And that actually gives me a much better answer to Mr. Armstrong's question, because I work right now as an integration engineer, and the level of integration that I had to learn while a volunteer in a community where I was the only American, where I had to draw in people from all different aspects to be able to accomplish a goal. I think that was the number one thing that I learned that I use right now in NASA.
Jim, go ahead. Robert, go ahead.
Collaborative servant engineer. Thank you.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Jim, it isn't only in the Peace Corps that you have to ask the people. I had experience in 1963 when I was in Korea. My engineer company was responsible for maintaining a road down something called Smuggler's Gap. And to make it more passable when it rained, the engineers put in these, we called them Texas wood. We all drive over them. They're those big blocks of concrete put in the middle of a stream with some culvert pipes through them. And when the stream's low, the stream goes under the thing. And when it's hot, the water's high, it goes over the top. Well, we had put one in and we were getting ready to put one in another village. And the village elder came out and said, don't do that. It won't work. So being what I am, when they told me to put the next one in, instead I did what the village elder did. I did that twice. We had 10 inches of rain in an hour. We drove down the road. There was only 2 passable streams. And that's where I did what the village elder told me to do. The rest were totally impassable. Yeah.
Yep. That's what happens all the time. You got to listen to the people who are there. They know.
Tim, how's the Peace Corps doing now as far as recruits and interest? And I've got kind of an ancient history in this. My senior year at Baylor, I'm a Baylor Bear and try to bring a little balance to these Aggies and Texas folks. But I was asked to help. Bill Moyers was assistant director of the Peace Corps and came to my campus my senior year, and I was asked to help design and help recruit students after they graduated to join the Peace Corps. And interestingly, then I went to Washington and worked for a congressman and got drafted on a pro bono basis to work with Sergeant Shriver and Moyers on how to effectively recruit college graduates. And so you touch a lot of things that really reaches some great memories for me. But bottom line, how's the Peace Corps doing now on interest, support from the Congress, as well as enlistees, if I can use that word?
There was, if I remember right, there were some rocky times during the previous administration in the White House. We expressly refrained from speaking about anything having to do with politics as volunteers, although you can imagine we were asked all the time during that time period what we thought about our own government, and we would just say that we supported the mission of Peace Corps. It was rocky there for a while in Congress, but the great thing about Peace Corps volunteers is many of them stay in service for life, meaning a lot of those folks are in government. So let's just say that any actions to try and curb Peace Corps are often frustrated because a lot of returned Peace Corps volunteers are already among the legislators and continue to be. And that's always been a strength. Nowadays, there are questions being asked. Obviously, the big pause after March of 2020, in where all volunteers were taken away from their posts, never been done before. That led to a period of people asking, what is Peace Corps and what are we trying to do? Does it make sense to keep the model from 1963? I know that we're now deploying volunteers again. They're going out to various posts, including Ghana. And I believe what we're trying to rebuild the Peace Corps infrastructure from the ground up, because you can imagine there was a lot of institutional knowledge passed down from one class of volunteers to the next one that's lost now, that the new volunteers going to these countries have to learn everything anew. So I think right now it's just getting on its feet, but I'm not worried for the long-term life of the Peace Corps. I think it's going to be around for a good long while.
Very interesting, and thank you.
Tim, thank you very much for the presentation. It's great. Greg, thank you for bringing him along. What is our program for next week? Is, I guess maybe Mim isn't here, so we will be Mim. We'll have a
Yeah, here she is. Here's Mim.
Mim. Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm here. I just didn't like my image. Anyway, we're going to hear from the CEO of Honor Flight. Honor Flight is an organization which recognizes and takes veterans on trips to memorials, specifically in Washington, D.C. So read about him, and we'll look forward to those of you who are interested to join us next week. And it will be at Rudy's, and it will be in person.
Yes, yes. Thank you. Just before we go, I'd like Sam to give us a little shot about our vision screening that's coming up this weekend.
Yeah, I want to make sure if the guests can stay over afterwards. Oops. I was hoping that the guests can stay over because I've got some questions at NASA since I worked over in Building 36 and Building 32. I'll talk to him about that if he stays. Anyway, the vision screening that we did last week was outstanding. Thanks to Rudy, his wife, Patty, Cody, Alan, you, Robert, were there. We had 8 people, 10 total with the help, and we saw 109 people, and we gave out 35 vouchers for free glasses, and we're helping these kids out. We are catching these kids before school, and it's outstanding. And we're going to do it again next week and the following week. Next Saturday, we're going to be at the old VA building on Montopolis, 2901 Montopolis, and that's Community Care has that building now, and they revamped it. We're going to be there from 8:30 to 12, and we're looking for any people that can help us. I'm going to get some help, but we need to have them because they're going to have the same situation, and we're going to help those kids. The following week, we'll have another one, but that will be it. We'll have 3 in a row, but we're going to get these kids. We're going to hit them as hard as we can, make sure that those kids have glasses. And we were either, if all the kids go to get glasses that we gave them, there'll be at least 30 students that will have glasses starting school next year. That is fabulous. And I thank the Lions Club, and I thank the people that came and supported it. And I think we're going to do it again. And I'm glad that I'm part of this team, guys, and I appreciate the help. Thanks.
Hey, Sam, should they contact?
The day after tomorrow, right?
Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday, yes.
8:30. 8:30 to
Sam,
12.
should people contact you directly?
Yeah, they can contact me directly, and we can have 2 teams if they want. I'll be there from 8:30 to 12, but it's quick. It won't take long to do it all. But if they want to come in at 10 o'clock and help us out, that's okay. We'll do it.
Sam, what's your phone number?
512-914-1287.
1287. Okay.
Yeah. And since we got a young guy at NASA, I've got some stories to tell him. So if he can stay on, I'd like to talk to him about a couple of.
Thanks, Tim. Just a few important dates. The Saturday we just heard about. On the 13th of August, we have the Capital City Club has got their 55th anniversary banquet and auction. Keep that in mind. And don't forget about Ann and Susie's clay shoot on September the 9th. So that pretty well wraps it up. Have a great week.
Okay, everybody. I'll leave the thing on if you want to keep talking, Tim.
Sam, I have a meeting at 2, so
Good.
I have to stop then.
Thanks.
Okay.
Y'all
Very good meeting.
All right. Anybody else have anything? Everybody have a good day.
Bye.
Bye.
I know.